Hi, it's Katrina Mikett again, one of the co-curators to the art exhibit Armed Disposal that's up at Victori Mo. The show looks at gun consumerism and gun violence in the US and posits whether or not the original intentions of the Second Amendment are achieving its goals of protection. Does a violent means prevent a violent ends? And I am joined by another one of the 8 artists, Bren Ahearn, who I'm very excited to talk to because he is a fellow cross-stitch artist as well. The show is very textile heavy in general, but as one of the other artists in the show that also has cross-stitch artwork, it's always great to talk to another one. I don't get to do that very often. So Bren, thanks for joining me. Happy to have you here and in the show.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Brett. Thanks for joining us again. So please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how long you've been making art, maybe your art education, anything you want to share.
Sure. Well, I'm kind of an older artist. I'm 56 right now. So I came of age in the 1970s. So what that means is that there was a craft renaissance going on then. So I did all sorts of things like sand art, string art, decoupage, all sorts of 70s crafts. My mother, she really encouraged us to do crafts. So all of us kids did crafts. And she also encouraged us to do music. My mother, she was very encouraging of creative activities, like I said. I think it was also a different time then where there was art education in school as well as music education. My mother was an English teacher. I remember playing Scrabble with her. She instilled in me a love of language. I remember as I got into maybe middle school or so, it was uncool to do crafts. And so I kind of went into a crafting closet, and one of many closets, and didn't really re-enter the craft world until I was in my 30s. So I went to high school, went to university, and my last semester, I took a linguistics class. And I thought, oh, this is what I should have been studying all along. And I thought it was too late. So I didn't study linguistics. I just kind of went into the work world for a year or two, and then I got a degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages. Because it was the 1980s, everyone was after money, and I thought it would be maybe a nice kind of way to blend the interests of linguistics with making a living. So I did that. I taught for a while, and I realized that I didn't want to teach language, I wanted to study language. So I was teaching in Japan. I came back. I was living in Los Angeles. And I remember I said to my then boyfriend, now husband, one day, I said, I'm going to go to the art center and take pottery, because I always wanted to take pottery. And I came home and I said, pottery was full. I'm going to take weaving instead. And he said, that's random. And I thought it was random, but I thought more about it. And my sister, she's into textiles. She sews costumes for theatrical productions. She also was the wardrobe manager for an amusement park. She's worked on designers' collections during Fashion Week. My one brother, he is a puppeteer who makes his own puppets and costumes for the puppets as well as for himself. The other 2 siblings, one is a woodworker and an opera singer, and the other one is a graphic designer. So I think I just kind of continuing the textile tradition with my family. Then to integrate it with what I was talking about my mother, where she instilled in me a love of language, it turns out that I learned later that the words text and textile are related. So from the word meaning to weave, and there's all these textile expressions in English, like spin me a tale, fabric of society. So I try to use textiles in order to tell a story, I guess. It's kind of a long answer to your question, huh?
Yeah, so when did you officially start cross-stitching?
I started in 2007. I was weaving. I was going to go to grad school, and I thought, oh, weaving just takes too long. I got to do something that's faster. And my husband said, ironically, that it doesn't take it's not faster to do my cross stitching. It takes just as long to do the cross stitching, as you probably know, right?
Yeah.
And also, I thought at the time, oh, well, it's gendered feminine. I can exploit this somehow. I didn't know. And when I started school, the volunteer in the studio, Barbara Shapiro, she said, I know a woman who has a sampler collection. I'm going to take you to see it. And so I went to see it, and I just thought, wow, this is great. I had never experienced, growing up on the East Coast, you saw samplers, but I never really thought, they were kind of just in the background. I never really thought about them being used as an educational tool. And so that inspired me to investigate how I've been educated to be a man in American society and how to use them in my work.
That is probably a great segue for one of my questions to find out what has been the response from people in general to be a man working as cross stitch, because cross stitch and textile art still carries so much stereotype that it's feminine, it's a woman's domestic chore, it's a craft, like you said. Like, it's come a long way since sort of colonial days when they were making those samplers that you were talking about. But yeah, what has been the reaction so far?
Well, I think now, because I was in school from 1997 to 2010, and so I think it's even more common to see men doing, I guess, this quote, women's work, unquote. But I was living in Sacramento at the time I was getting my MFA, and I was commuting to San Francisco. I would do my cross stitch on the train, and it was interesting. I noticed that oftentimes women would sit next to me, but men wouldn't. So I don't know what that was all about. Some people, when I tell them I cross stitch, I think some people think it's a quaint hobby. So then I would send them to my site, and the person goes, "Oh, that's what you're all about."
I know
Um,
that reaction.
you get that same reaction too? Because there's a lot of similarities between our work.
Mhm.
Do you get that reaction too?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know what to do with it sometimes if they're not versed in the art, if they're not used to seeing sort of subversive textiles. They need some time to process it alone.
Yeah, yeah. But I think also the fact that we work in this home crafts medium
Mhm.
gives us a connection to people. Because I've noticed that people come up to me and they'll talk to me because I'm cross stitching, and they want to show me their own work. And I think it's important for us to encourage people with their work. When I was in school, there was an undergrad who was kind of stitching very quietly in the corner. I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Are you embroidering?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Show me." He said, "No, no, no." And he showed me, and I said, "This is really cool." And he told me that he was kind of hesitant to show it to me because he saw this woman cross stitching. He showed his work to her, and the first thing she did was turn it over and look at the back and tell him all the mistakes on the back.
Yes. Okay. Little story. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm Ukrainian and I take traditional embroidery classes at the Ukrainian Art Museum in Manhattan. And yeah, that is like an old grandma sort of checking in on you snooty response, is that they don't care what the front is, how neat is the back. Yeah, so that is the thing that exists in Ukrainian culture and probably more like Eastern European culture too, but I totally know what you're talking about.
I had a show at the Bellevue Arts Museum about 4 years ago, and I was giving a tour to the docents. And I said, "Do you want to see the back of one of my big samplers?" And they said, "Yeah." So I lifted it up, and one woman made a comment about how all of the lines weren't all vertical. I guess I had horizontal lines in the back too. So
I kind of think the messier, the more beautiful. There's a real art to it as well.